I don't have an addiction. Hello my dolly dearies and welcome to another video. Now, as you may recognise from the thumbnail, me and all of the amiibos around, it is an Animal Crossing video. I absolutely adore Animal Crossing, and it has been a long-standing wish of mine to make one of the characters as dolls. And you know, I definitely don't have an Animal Crossing addiction or anything. What are you talking about? It's not a problem, you're a problem, leave me alone. Anyway, this video is also a collaboration to celebrate the anniversary of the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons. It is a collab with the lovely Ombi, so make sure to go and check them out. A link to her Instagram will be in the description box below. I decided that I wanted to make Celeste, who is my long-standing favourite character ever since you can make constellations with her in Wild World. And for her design, I went through quite a few different designs and ideas, her starting off as a little kind of humanoid, scholarly thing, before progressing into a magical girl, and then eventually landing on this design which incorporates many aspects of her in New Horizons, which I think is absolutely perfect. But without any further ado, let's get on with the video. For this doll, we will be using this Rochelle Goyle as a base. Her light eye sculpt will be perfect. And throughout this project, I will be casting star fragments in my resin mould. Each one takes about 24 hours to dry once poured, so those will be going on throughout. Here we can see one drying now. But to start for this project, you're going to want to take a pair of small, sharp scissors to clip hair as close to the head as possible. Once all that's left is stubble, take a pair of needle nose pliers to scrape all of the stubble out from inside the head. It always astounds me how much gunk can fit in a single doll's head. But with that chucked into the bin, we can go about sawing off her ears. Since we're making Celeste, she doesn't quite need little gargoyle ears. Since she is also going to be a bird, we need to saw off her leg for body modifications. To do this, I marked each leg just below the knee before taking my handsaw to saw away at the bottom of the legs, which can also go into the parts box. And here we see her with slightly weird knees going on, but we can fix that. Using another doll for reference for height, I take some wire and wrap it into a roughly bird feet shaped thing. To do this, I take 3 wires, 2 of them in an L shape and 1 of them in a long U. I take one of the L-shaped ones and wrap it around the U-shaped one, taking a pair of flat nose pliers to tuck in the edge so it isn't spiky or sharp. Then taking my hot glue gun, I glue each of them into the tiny hole in the doll's leg already, and secure it in place with some other wire. To build up her legs, we're going to be using some white morph, which you do by putting into water and then pressing onto legs like plastic. To cover her legs, we're also going to cut up a small bit of yellow yarn. With the white morph all dried and looking a little lumpy, we can try covering it up with some yellow acrylic paint, which is very, very bright, might I add. Then covering it all in little flocking bits with the yarn we cut up. And it looks decent, I like to think, and she looks quite like Big Bird, which is mildly concerning, but hopefully we can change that throughout this project. Her arms also look a little bit boring, so we're going to add a gradient, as I did on the design, to her arms with black paint. I make the gradient using PVA glue to keep the other end clear to her natural skin tone. Now for the feathers. I didn't have any great idea on how to do this, so I went with the first thing which came to mind, which was covering some fabric, which is roughly the colour of Celeste's feathers, and covering it in PVA glue so that it will not fray. With that all dried, it's a slightly darker colour, but I still think it will be okay. Taking a small white gel pen, I sketch little feather shapes on the back so I know what to cut. And a couple hours later, we have a bunch of really tiny bird feathers. They do look a little odd. Hopefully they'll look okay on the doll. Taking a pair of tweezers and some Yoo-hoo glue, I gently stick each feather down. I also stick some to her arms to tie those in a bit. It actually doesn't look half bad on the legs, so I copy it to the other one, and we're not going to cover the top of her leg so it doesn't mess with the articulation. We're also going to add a quick body mod to make her nose more beak-like using some epoxy sculpt. For a better tutorial, go and check out Delightful, because mine's so atrocious I did not think about putting it in this video. For her shirt, we will need some custom fabric. So I paint a checkerboard pattern outlining each with gold, as we see on Celeste's belly in the game, and using a shirt pattern from Moonlight Jewel Dolls, link to her channel and Delightful's will be in the description, I make this little shirt with ruffles per sleeve. I glue in the collar and add a small little line down the middle which is going to serve as a made up artificial seam on the front of her shirt. Then all I have to do is sew in the sleeves. And I add a small little red bow at the front. To add some buttons, I take some old gemstones and glue them across the front of her shirt. I pick one up with the tweezer, dab it on some glue, and quickly stick it in place on the shirt. Pretty cute, right? I definitely think it looks like something Celeste would wear. And using yet another pattern from Moonlight Jewel, we are going to make her skirt. I take the pattern, dividing each portion into 6 and sewing a ruffle across the bottom, which is the same pattern that can be seen on Celeste's wings and tail. And I put that in place across the bottom of the skirt, and with the magic of editing, we can put it in place. Oh my god, it worked! Who would have known? And we've got a pretty good looking skirt. But this is where the fun part of the design comes in. Around her skirt, I wanted to put all of the 12 zodiac constellations to match up with the star fragments across the bottom. So using my amateur skill at embroidery and brief knowledge on how to do French knots, I decided to do a bunch of those across the skirt, following different patterns for different constellations. And wouldn't you know it, there it is done! I think each is vaguely recognisable as their constellation, and if you look closely, you'll definitely be able to see it. The back isn't too neat, but nobody cares about the back, we never see it. And then I add a bunch of other constellations. Can you recognise them all? And I added a bunch of stars too to blend it all together. Now just to gather the top of the skirt, and sew it to the waistband. And there we go, that's a lot of her outfit done, and the skirt just looks adorable with the shirt, don't you think? I decided to add a bit more of a peppy look by adding 2 little straps to add as suspenders to the skirt. Now for the doll, but wait a minute, what's this? I accidentally ended up doing a bit of her face, sketching on the bare plastic, and then it got a bit out of hand, and I did a lot of it. I am very sorry. But we can do her hair. To do this, I take my rerouting tool, stabbing a hole into her head, grabbing one strand of unravelled yarn and slitting it through my rerouting tool, and then stabbing it into the hole I made. I do this repeatedly around the head. Since yarn is quite thick, I only put one into each hole and will only be going around the edge of her head. We also have to create an artificial widow's peak, since Rochelle's sculpt doesn't actually have one. So to do this, I take my yarn as I usually would, and pierce extra holes going down this little arrow to the front of her head. But that's all of her hair rerouted, looking very, very thick. Very, very squishy as well. Very fun to squish. But with all of her hair in her head, we can take a pet brush to comb apart all of the fibres from the yarn. She looks a bit like that kid from The Incredibles, you know the one? But we brushed out all of her hair with a mighty lot of fluff, and it still looks a little funky. To remedy this, we're going to take a hair straightener and pass it softly over the fibres. I take a small section and bring it away from the rest with my fingers, before running my straightening iron over the yarn very, very slowly. She looks a lot better with it all ironed out. It looks quite like my design for once. And I just had this nifty little hair bow pin to secure the hair in place while I combed it, but we will be replacing that with an actual bow for the doll. To make the bow, I'm going to take these small scraps of pink fabric. Since the bow isn't very big, I'll only need a little bit. I sew a small rectangle out of the pink fabric and turn it inside out with a pair of tweezers. I then ran a ladder stitch across one side to close the little hole in. I wrap some string around the middle and section off a teeny bit more fabric to cover up the string I tied across the middle. To hide all of the bare ends of this fabric, I fold each side in a teeny little bit, and then we'll run some glue across the middle and wrap it around the bow, making sure none of the raw ends show. And there we have an adorable little pink bow. I secure it in place with a teeny bit of thread with a little ponytail at the back. But now we can actually move on to her face up, giving her our first coat of Mr. Super Clear. With her face being sprayed with Mr. Super Clear, we can move on to the first steps of the face up. I blush her cheeks with a pale pink, her lips with a dark red, and her nose with a yellow. I then go in with some grey pastels to shove into the crease to add some more depth. For this face up, we will be omitting the eyebrows, as in the design I have to make them 3D and elongate off her face. To lighten where you put in too much chalk pastels, you can take a kneaded eraser and dab it away. I take a white pencil to brighten the whites of her eyes. Taking a pink pencil with a sharp flat edge, I gently sketch in the waterline. And with a black pencil, I go in to define her eyeliner a little more. Using my white pencil, I try to brighten the colour of her eyes. I then take a pink pencil to brighten up the lips a little as well, before taking the white again to highlight her Cupid's bow. Going in with a darker pink pencil, I add some lines to the lips. Taking the teeniest tiniest bit of white gouache paint, I go to brighten the whites of her eyes to make them really stand out. Taking a small, damp paintbrush, I lift tiny bits of pigment off my pencils to make her eyes more vibrant. Continuing with this technique of lifting pigment off the pencils with a damp paintbrush, I add a small U shape to the bottom of her eyes, leaving the pupil blank in the middle. Continuing with my technique of a wet paintbrush, I also take a grey similar to the skin tone to try and blend the epoxy sculpt nose into the rest of the skin. Before lifting some yellow pigment off one of my pencils, to add some yellow at the bottom of her nose to try and make it look more like the owl beak Celeste has. Taking blue from a slightly darker pencil, I go and sketch in her pupil, making them stand out against the rest of the blue eye. Going in with the same blue pencil, I blend out a little bit of the pigment to add a gradient from the top of the eye to the bottom, before taking some black to outline her eyes to accentuate her eyeliner more. I add small lines to the outside of our iris to give it more of a pop art anime-esque feel. I go in with some more pink to add some brightness to her waterline. I gently blend out all of the colours in her eye, trying to find a balance between having vibrant at the bottom and dark at the top, sort of like the night sky you see once the sun has set. I spend time going back and forth, reworking the eyes, adding more darkness to the bits I want darker, accentuating some tones, adding highlights until I'm finally happy with the results. And of course adding more eyeliner, because what is a Sky the Golden Doll without heaps of perfect eyeliner? Taking my thin paintbrush, I gently stroke on some tiny eyelashes to her lower lash line. Going back in with a grey pencil, I highlight her eyelid crease. Taking a paintbrush with some pigment lifted off a black pencil, I add some more detail to her eyeliner and eyelashes, wanting to give them a slightly bolder, more striking look. But with that eyeliner, her face is looking pretty cute, wouldn't you say? I took some yellow acrylic paint to add some more vibrancy to the nose because pencils and gouache didn't quite seem to be making the cut. But her face is looking very, very good if I do say so myself. But now for the final touch, glitter. Since she's a doll themed around the night and Celeste and stars, it's only appropriate that she has some glitter in her eyes. So instead of highlights and more detail, I take a paintbrush with some PVA glue and glitter and brush that onto the eyes. And instead of eye highlights, opting for small little chunks of star glitter. After deliberating between two sizes, I went with the smaller, more delicate one. But with her face up done, we can remove her hair from the hair burrito. Using the same yarn I did for the hair, I make two small eyebrows by putting a teeny bit of PVA glue on them. And adding some dots. They certainly are striking, aren't they? But with her head done, we can reattach it to the body. Do this by taking your doll's head and gently squeezing the temples, twisting the body back and forth. She is just looking adorable, isn't she? Only thing is her hair's a little straggly, but we can sort that out. But firstly, we've got all 12 of our star fragments finished. They're just adorable. To attach them to the skirt, I take a very small drill bit and drill into each star fragment. Making a small little eye hook with some wire from a jewellery making kit, I dab the end of the wire in some Ooak glue and slot it into the small hole I drilled in the top of the star fragment. And then I sew each one beneath their respective constellation on her skirt. It just looks absolutely amazing. I also then made her a teeny little cape using some offcuts of the fabric and painting white and black around the bottom and fastening it with a red bow at the front. And with her cape done, there's only one thing left, her small star ponchette handbag. To make this, I cut two small stars out of some old cardstock. After getting all of my materials laid out, including an old necklace chain with two hoops across the end, some small chunks of ribbon, which I thread through the small hoops to act as straps, we have a little chain for her bag to go on. Now for the rest of the handbag. With my two little stars, I glue a sheet of thin fabric over them to add a bit more volume and texture to the bag. To stop the edges of this fabric fraying, I dab some small bits of glue around the edge. And then, using that small bit of glue to prevent the fray, I stick it onto my gold fabric. With it stuck onto the gold fabric, we've got our two little star shapes. And there we see one half of the bag done. Let me show you how I did it. Taking a small pair of fabric scissors, I cut gently around the star shape for the bag already, making small slits where the stars go in. I then put some glue across the back of the cardstock, not wanting it to show on the front because this is very thin fabric. And I fold each of the edges over onto the glue. Aren't they just adorable? I'm very surprised I had a fabric which looked so accurate to the one in game. But with those sandwiched together, we've got a teeny little handbag. To attach the strap, I glue each of the ribbons in place across the back of the star. Before going in with some more Ooak glue to stick on the other side of the star. But with that, she's done! She's pretty cute, right? And for once, really accurate to my design, which I am very, very happy about. She just turned out so sweet and cute and pretty, and I love her so much. Are there any other Animal Crossing characters you guys would like to see as dolls? If so, leave a comment in the comments section below. Do make sure to also go and check out Ombi, who made the most adorable little Stitches doll. But as always guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, leave a comment and maybe share the video with a friend. And as always, I shall see you all in the next video. Bye!